What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Leveled Up Life podcast. As always, Branamier, Courtney, here with my main man, Paul McClain,
My man.
helping you level up your life in all the areas that matter most, whether it's your faith, your family, your fitness, your finance, or your franchise. And our job, our heart, is to help you level up in all those areas. And today is no different. We're gonna dive into an important topic, something I think that we can both speak pretty well to, not because we're experts, but because we got a lot of kids.
Yep.
And so not that we're perfect parents, but we've definitely had our highs and lows, ups and downs, and we feel like we can speak into a certain area of your life. So if you have kids, this would be a good episode to turn up the volume and lean in, maybe take some notes. Not that we have it figured out, but we're gonna do our best to help you level up your life. We want to talk about 3 gifts to give your children. Maybe this would be a good one for them to listen to as well. 3 gifts to give your children. We got Peyton McClain on the 1s and 2s in here, so this would be a good
Yeah, I intentionally made sure she was behind the
That's right.
video and audio today, so she was forced to listen to this podcast.
And this ain't no Christmas gifts either. We're not talking about spoiling those kids and just giving them what they want, right? I think we're both guilty of spoiling our kids in many different ways, and our wives would be equally as guilty, But we've learned, not to spoil as much, but the truth is that's the world that we live in now, where it's like, hey, you want to please your kids, you want to make sure that they got everything that you didn't have, right? And so what happens is you overcompensate for their feelings or things that you went through, and because you didn't get it, you want to make sure your kids got it, and then it creates this cycle of just like entitlement and I don't know. We'll get into all of it, but I'm excited to get into this topic today. So 3
It's
gifts.
gonna be good, dude.
3 gifts to give your kids.
And so, I think for one, comment. We want to see more comments in the in the feed, and also make sure you share this, guys. There's somebody that's gonna be watching this that's like, man, I needed to hear this word to be able to go out there and level up in the area that we're gonna really hone in today, which is family. And I love what you said, dude. Like, for one, we do have a lot of kids collectively.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we go to a restaurant and we shut it down.
Yep.
And there's been so many times. Because I started as a parent at the age of 19. I was young. And so a lot of things that I didn't do right, that I messed up, that I tripped over. Yeah. And then as I sit back years down the road, I'm just like, man, I wish I would have done this. I should have adjusted that. My philosophy, the way I thought about it should have been different. And so a lot of it's going back and not because, like you said, we're perfect parents, man. I'm still messing up in all these different areas. But hey, let's unpack this together and kind of grow together in this category. And so really to give you a leg up as a parent, because how many know, man, if everything's going good at the house, or going better at the house, or progressing at the house, man, everything else just seems to be doing that much better, right?
100%.
And if everything's going great outside the house, finances are killing, man, you got a 6-pack, everything's going great, and your house is messed up, then it kind of doesn't really matter, right? And so it's a big deal. So we're going to get into the 3 gifts, but before we do that, let's talk about like the 3 things that I feel like it's easy to fall into. I would call it like the great pitfall of our generation, and one of them being giving the kids what they don't deserve, right? Like the participation trophy, like, hey, Jimmy, you just showed up. Right. And I think it's easy nowadays to applaud and celebrate just showing up. And so you want to go out and give your kids something when they haven't really earned it and they don't deserve it, right? And I think for me, that's one of those things as a parent, you kind of want to give that gift or whatever that might be for your child. And so I don't know if you found yourself doing this, like almost kind of finding ways, even if they don't hit what they were supposed to hit or do what they were supposed to do, justifying a way to still be like, well, if you do this and adjusting, and now they kind of give it to them. But what happens is now you're kind of teaching them how to treat themselves. And that's a big deal, because the whole goal, right, is to raise independent and interdependent children that as they become an adult, they kind of have this consequence mindset that they lead themselves with, right? They don't want to give themselves something unless they've actually did what they said they were going to do. And I think it starts as a parent to kind of show them that way by only giving them stuff that they actually earn and deserve.
Yeah, I think, we both coached our kids in sports for years now. And, especially when they're younger and they're in rec sports, it's like everyone gets a trophy. So I've always made it clear to like my kids, like, yeah, they're going to get a trophy at the end of the year, no matter how they did, right, record wise. But I always just try to be clear with my kids, like, hey, parents, this is not a participation trophy. Like, you're going to get this trophy because you earned it. And I think that if you can raise kids that have some sense of like, hey, I earned this, I worked for this, I sacrificed it for this, well, they're going to appreciate the trophy that much more. But we live in a culture now where it's like, hey, the goalpost of success is moved on a daily basis, right? So it's one thing to set a goalpost, and then it's like, hey, it doesn't look like we're gonna we're gonna score, so let's shorten it up a little bit, right? Let's make it a little bit easier for little Jimmy, because that will make him feel better, in the short term. It will make us feel better, like we got to win as parents. But in the long term, we just made Jimmy ride a short bus, right?
Right.
Made
Yeah.
him shorten the field, and he scored a 75-yard touchdown when it's really supposed to be 100 yards, right? And so I think that, and it's true in anything of life, right? Like, we all want the temporary satisfaction because it feels good in the moment, but in the long term, we end up eating the spoiled fruit of our short term, like, comfort. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, we got convenience now, and little Jimmy didn't throw a fit now because we gave him the trophy, but like, what did it do to his mentality, down the road from now? Because now he thinks everything is his.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't know what sacrifice is, or he doesn't know what, working hard for something is. And it's just balance that, as a parent, you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
Because, like, you do hear some of the old school parents like, oh yeah, back in our day we had to walk, uphill both ways through the snow. It's like, well, you probably didn't, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like this fine balance that, as a parent now, we have to not give them everything they want, but at the same time still reward them and encourage them to, like, go after something, but not beat them down. So it's like this weird balance that I find myself, like, struggling with.
Dude, I think it's difficult to do, but it's like almost like if I said, hey, so the kids, I've got them doing the gratitude journal again.
Yeah.
And so if they do it, I said 30 days, you got 2 days you can miss for the entire month. So you got 2 forgiveness days, right? Now,
I like it.
The difficult thing is at the end of the month, if they miss 4 and you're like, well, they did 26.
Right.
And so,
which is great.
Yeah, which is great, but it's not what you said, and they didn't really earn it. So now you can set in parameters like if you miss 4, you get X amount. If you miss only 2, you get double the amount, right? And those kind of things. But you got to do it up front. Yeah. And I found myself, because I've done this many times, where it's like, all right, I'm gonna give it to you, but the next time you can only miss 1. And it doesn't. To me, as I look back at it, it's like that's not how it works, right? You want to sit down and say, listen, I love you so much. I'm so proud that you did this. But we said 2 days, and I love you too much and care too much about you to give you something that you didn't earn or deserve, because I know you don't want that. I know who you are, and I know you're the kind of person and kid that's going to want to earn everything that you get. And so I would do that for anybody else, but I'm not going to do it for you because you're special. Next time we got to make sure you hit those 28 days. Are you wanting to do it again? This time, if you do it, I'm going to give you a little bit more. But now it's a whole new thing. But I'm telling you, like, I've done it many times where I try to justify how to still do it because they did good, but they didn't truly earn what we had spoken about. Now, what does that translate to? Well, it translates to everything. Now, them showing up to work late is not that big of a deal, even though it was said. Well, I didn't show up that late,
right?
Or so the whole goal is like really kind of setting up the standard of like, man, everything in life's got to be done with excellence, because if you're teaching them, hey, everything that I give you, if it's earned because you did an excellent job, well, they're more likely to keep that standard as they move forward, right? So I think that's a big thing that's easy to fall into. The second thing, and this one's I think more difficult than ever before. I don't know, maybe this is going back to like the people that the old timers are like, man, if they said something, talk back to me, I'd whoop them.
Right.
Where I think that's become so lax now, right? It's like almost like the kids and parents are peers, and I've found myself like arguing back with, opposed to just saying, whoa, listen, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you think I'm right or wrong. Like, I'm your parent, and this is what I said, so your response is yes, Dad. It's not back and forth and me trying to justify it or get you on. It's just saying like, no, listen, there's got to be a level of respect that we're not peers. And I think it's easy nowadays to like try to be your kid's best friend, but if you're the best friend, then there's so much familiarity, you lose the favor that God's given you to actually lead them in the way they should go.
Well, it's the saying, like, parent them now so you can be friends with them later.
Yeah.
As opposed to be friends with them now and you won't be friends with them later.
Yeah.
So it's like, but the world is so like transparent now, right? So before, like, when there was no cell phones, when there was no smartphones, when there was no internet, when there was no computers, like, you didn't know what your parents did every day. Like, they weren't posting their life. They weren't sharing stuff. So now if you got teenagers, like, they see how you think and they see what you post and they see how you interact. And so it's like, I think, the lines have been blurred between kids and parents, and you see it now because you're right. Like the conversations that my kids have, even with me, like I would never have those conversations with my dad
Yeah.
because I'd be afraid to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it was just a different type of parenting. And so, but at the same time, you're right. It's like, hey, no, in this moment, like I'm the parent, you're the kid.
Yeah.
And establishing like that boundary and like setting the standard, what we were talking about earlier, is like, man, it's hard to do, but it's so necessary now.
Yeah.
Because like, dude, kids think because they got access to the internet or they're a phone that they now have all the wisdom in the world.
Sure.
And in the reality, they have no clue. Right. But it's like teaching them that and reminding them that, like, yes, you are amazing and you are smart. And one day you will have all the answers that you think you have now.
Yeah.
But like, not yet, kind of thing. Like, we're not on the same playing field. And reminding them of that is a constant daily task.
Well, dude, I think you said it perfect, man. Like teaching them how to treat you, right? Like if you're teaching them how to treat you and it's a peer, well, man, you're going to lose all authority when you need to have it most. When you need to have that conversation that's encouraging and uplifting them and reminding them of their true identity and who they are, right? When it comes to like speaking truth over a struggle or a bad thought or them getting caught in a bad habit, whatever that is, if you're just a peer, man, a peer doesn't have the same authority as a parent. You know what I mean? A parent, that's a completely different thing.
Well, a peer's like, I'll take that into consideration. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But a parent's like, hey, no, this is what you're gonna do. This is what I have to do, right? Because like you're the authority figure in my life, and I think a lot of parents are losing that authoritative, word into their kids' lives. It's like, hey, no, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, and this is where we're going. Like until you get out on your own, like this is, Joshua said, like, hey, you can serve who you want to serve, but as for me and my house, like, we're going to serve the Lord, and that may not be convenient or comfortable for you, but under this roof, like
it's what it is.
It's what it is.
Yeah.
And what's the last one?
So the third one. So there's four of the things I think that are pitfalls. The third one is giving praise when they don't deserve it, right? And it's almost like when I had a parent on the team, dude, like their kid would kick the ball, bro, if they made contact with the ball. And they're not a kid. It's not a little kid. They're like 10 years old, But if they miss a goal, great kick. I'm thinking like, first of all, a great kick actually goes into the net.
Right.
Like that's a great kick. Like it actually scored. We progressed. We're getting closer to the win. But I think that it's so easy to praise. Like, so for me, my gift is like an encourager.
Yeah.
I love to, empower people, equip people, find some things in them and then bring them out. And so, but I found that if I'm praising the person, not praising the duty, praising the action, praising what they did, then it's not, it almost creates some kind of like gap where there's anxiety between it. Meaning that if I'm like telling my kid that you're the smartest, you're so smart, you're the smartest kid. Well, then they go to school and they have a situation that doesn't make that true, because the reality is they're not the smartest kid. And when I say you're the most beautiful girl in the world, the reality is they're probably not the most beautiful girl in the world, right? Like those things they're not necessarily true. And so now when they're going and there's different things taking place, they've got this false, falsified things that they're trying to live up to, and it creates this anxiety, right? No different than, I even had it when I was a kid. They'd be like, you're such a good communicator. Like you're going to be a salesperson. I remember my
Right.
grandma saying that, and then it created this like almost anxiety because I'd go mess up, and if I had a sales call and I went wrong, it was like this disparity that caused anxiety. And so I figured, for me, the same way that I think it is for the kids is I want to praise what they're doing. Meaning that I'll give you an example. I just did this today with Parker. I wrote her a note, right? And she's been a great team player on the volleyball team. Like she's really encouraging. They come together. She's just a good team player. And so instead of praising just the person, right? What I'm doing is I'm praising the process. So I'm saying, sweetheart, you're such a team player. I noticed how you came around the team yesterday and you encouraged them. That, uplifting others honors God. I just want to say I'm proud of you for that. So now I'm praising the process, which she's more likely to do the process, but I'm only praising the person. Now I love the person. I love them deeply, but I'm going to praise the process of them progressing into who they can be. So they're going to be more focused on that. And so I just feel like that to me is it was something I learned was like when I'm praising them, but not praising what they're doing, and then tying what they're doing to honoring God. There's a big difference as far as the effectiveness of it.
What do you think happens like when you begin to praise like the person? You think that their identity gets tied up in that thing that they're praising. So like if they're not then the most beautiful, or have, that some boy puts them down or they mess up on the team, you think that because you've spoken into that identity so much and they're not living up to it, it messes up their identity? Is that like the thought?
Well, I think the thought is like if I'm only praising them, then they're not focused on getting better or being the best version of themselves, right? And if I'm saying you're the smartest kid ever, opposed to saying, hey, I noticed when you studied really, really hard the other day, and you put in time and effort, you sacrificed, you didn't want to do it. It was it was a struggle, but you did it anyways. And look at what that led to. You got an A because of how hard you studied and how you were diligent in that. Well, now I'm focusing on the process. I'm going to get them to do more of the process. The process is going to lead to the result. But if I just say you're the smartest kid, which is like the end result of doing the process, well, then they're like, well, heck, I don't need to study that much. I'm just the smartest kid. And so I'm praising the person instead of the process. I'm not going to get the best from that person.
That's good. I like that. I hope you're taking notes, parents, because that's good teaching right there. I'm taking notes over here. One more thing.
So, well, the fourth one is, dude, this one's
giving them freedoms.
Yeah, this one
freedom
is
quickly.
This one will hurt.
Well, dude,
this will step on some toes.
Yeah, it's like when you give them freedom that they can't handle. It's like anything else in life, right? I think I taught our church the other week is like, you never want the blessing of God or like the promise of God to come to pass before you're ready to receive it. Right. So maybe there is like a blessing or an anointing or a favor on your life for, XYZ, for that business or for that ministry or for that marriage or for that whatever it is. But if you get that thing too soon, like that could be the worst thing for you, because you're not the person yet who can step in and lead that thing how it was created to be. And so it's like this, it's the same thing for a kid. Like when you begin to give them freedoms that they'll get one day, but they're not quite yet mature enough for them or ready for them, like they'll end up taking those freedoms, and those same freedoms will then lead them to bondage, right? Yeah. So like if you give them a phone because it's more convenient for you at the time, because it's like, hey, I got to get a hold of little Billy, right? So it's like, yeah, maybe you do need to get a hold of little Billy, but that freedom that little Billy now has is giving them access to a world that they may not be mature enough to step into yet. Yeah. And that freedom, on that phone could lead them into pain long term. And so I think that's big. Like, my son Brave, he's 5 now, but I remember teaching him how to ride his bike when he was like 3, and he would throw the biggest fits because his older brothers didn't have training wheels on, right? Their bikes, but he did, and so he couldn't make the correlation between, like, why do I have 4 wheels and I can't like go over the ramp like brothers are doing? And so it was just like 2-week battle of just like trying to convince him that he needed training wheels, and he didn't want to do it. So one day I just said, fine, I'll take him off. And guess what? He goes and crashes, throws a huge fit, and then got to put his training wheels back on. So it's like, but that's what we want to do as parents. Sometimes we just want to appease them, and we give them these freedoms that they're not necessarily ready for. And we got to be aware of it.
Yeah. I think it's like a paradox too, because it's like, it's easy to do the whole like, hey, don't cross the street, look both ways by yourself, right? And be so over the top with making sure that they got these bumper, rails on, or so to speak, to kind of keep them in the right lane. But then it's so easy nowadays, man, to give them a phone and at any age, and just expect that. I mean, in that phone, you know what you're holding, right? You hold everything in that thing. You could access anything and everything. And so I don't want my child to go run in the street, but I'll give them a phone that now they can access anything. They can get addicted to porn on that phone. They can get caught up in, and they can get a sex picture or whatever. What is it called? A sext?
I don't know.
A text.
I've never got one of those, Paul. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, dude, you've been married long enough. You should have. We're going to have to hope for that. But you know what I'm saying? But like they can have access to all these different things, right? They can get caught up consuming all these YouTube videos. I mean, I remember, watching Psalm. And it's easy, like he's crying, right? And it's like, hey, go here, watch the iPad. And now he's consuming, and before you know it, like I didn't even know, he was watching some like, super weird like little Barbie little thing, right? And I'm thinking like, what the heck, my boy's watching,
right?
And I don't know how it happened there, because it didn't start there. But what I'm saying is like, it's so easy to forget, like, man, what they're consuming is what's going to lead, guide, and direct them to the person that they're going to actually become, right? We are what we consume. We are what we think about all day long, right? That's why, scripture's, pretty clear where he says, meditate on nothing else that's but true, praiseworthy, noble, of good report, because that's going to lead and guide us to what we think, how we feel. And in all reality, that creates our personality.
Yep.
And so now it's just who we are. And so this checked me when I was kind of, thinking about it. I was like, dude, I need to do such a better job and sit back and saying, how much time does my 12-year-old have on her phone? And I actually did a better job, I think, with Peyton with it, and she hated it at the time, but she got her phone and that thing would shut off at like 6 p.m., right?
Yeah.
She couldn't access nothing after 6 p.m. Social media, she got, I think, like 20 or 30 minutes a day where she could access, social media. It was very limited. Right. YouTube, all that stuff was just limited. The apps were limited. Parker found out her passcode, and I'm not kidding, dude. And she knows how to get more time, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it, because she's like, "Dad, I'm not doing it." I'm like, "You aren't," but I need to spend more time realizing that that's the most important thing, because I'm gonna raise her, and she's now got, my job is to raise her to become an independent adult and to be the best version she could be, but she's consuming terrible stuff.
Now they got you discipling them, and they got whoever else they're watching on YouTube discipling them. Yeah. Now there's this battle between what you say and what they think is cool, and this influencer is saying. And now it's like, well, Mom, Dad, you don't really know what you're talking about, because this kid has.
And they'll watch videos of the kids interacting with their parents,
right,
and that becomes their normal. So then when you have a conversation with them and they respond like shut up, or they say something like that, you're like, what did you say? Where did that come from? Well, it probably came from some of the consumption. And so to me, when I went to this point, I was like, dude, this is one that, if you're like I am, it's checking everybody. Like, I'm giving them freedoms that they can't handle. They can't handle all that. What kind of restraints, what kind of restrictions can I put on it to ensure that it's not taking over them?
Peyton, do you ever feel like you wish you were the fifth child and not the first child? She's shaking her head. Yeah. Why?
Because that was the test.
You were the test. You were the first child's always the project, right? It's like, well, let's figure it out with this one, then we'll get the next ones right.
Yeah.
Let's.
Well, you're gonna get most of my inheritance. It's kind of like what I told.
Yeah, exactly.
The first staff I hired, I always wish I would have went back and like find them, because I messed them up. And same thing for Paige. She'll probably get a majority of the inheritance, because she was the guinea pig.
Well, dude, that's true. There's a double inheritance that goes to the oldest kid.
There you go, Pat.
There you go. So.
Wait, I think we should do part 2 on this.
We could.
Let's do part 2 where we go through the 3 gifts. And so I think, for one, those are the 4 things that we got to sit back and say, like, how can we do better with that? And this is something that it's just not me communicating, saying, hey, let me teach it. This is me talking to myself. And one of those things that we have to do each and every day to say, am I giving my kids freedoms that they can't handle? Am I praising, giving them praise that they don't deserve, right? What was the other one? The other 2? Praise that they don't deserve, freedoms that they can't handle.
They were good, whatever they were.
Kids are not peers, right? Am I peers? And then giving them what they don't earn. And so what we'll do is next week we'll jump into the 3 gifts to give your kids. And so and these are powerful, man. They're really, really good. And I think it'll make a massive difference to sit back, reflect, and say, okay, hey, we all have the same intention. We want to raise these kids in the way they should go, and sit back and be, proud of like who they become. And this was kind of hard for me to do, because it's like I got 5 kids, and who knows? I mean, I'm doing this kind of talking about some of these, lessons and things that we can focus on to be better parents. And one of my
still walking through the fire. Yeah. So don't judge us if you see us at the restaurant. All our kids are on iPad. All right.
Yeah. We're trying to figure this thing out. But hey, we'll figure it out together. We'll level up together, which is the focus.
Cool. I love you guys. This is a good episode.
Yeah. Share it.
Hey, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know. Put your city in there. We want to know where you're at, how we can help you. Love you guys.
All right, guys. Make it a big week. See you.